Hey everyone, this is Kevin D. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and how about a video review for a comic book? Yeah, we're actually going to do it today. So as you may or may not have figured out from some of my previous videos, I am a huge fan of Sailor Moon. I am technically one of the original Moonies. I don't go back as far back as some people, but I go back pretty far. I first saw Sailor Moon when I was waking up early in the morning at like 4 in the morning. I was homeschooled, doing as much schoolwork as I could before the day started so that I could basically have fun. And since mom and dad weren't around to tell me not to do things, I would do my schoolwork while watching TV, which parents say that is a bad thing to do, but you know what? I seem to get the work done and I seem to get it done correctly. So yeah, so much for that. But anyway, while you're doing homework in the morning, you have stuff on the TV, but you're not really watching it. You know, there's stuff like Timmy the Tooth and Bananas in Pajamas that were in syndication. Certainly nice background noise, but not something I would want to watch on my own. I always waited for Garfield and Friends at 7, and then I would stop doing what I was doing and watch. That was until a little show called Sailor Moon popped on. This was in 1995. It's scary to think how long ago that was. Guys, 1995 was more than 20 years ago, and Sailor Moon is celebrating her 25th anniversary either this year or last year or next year, something like that, but it has been around longer than some of you have been born. And I'm not going to talk about the history of the show per se. I think that's suitable for another video altogether, but I will say this. My love for Sailor Moon still is pretty strong to this day. I acknowledge some of the story flaws. I also acknowledge it was made for kids. I can't wait to share it with my niece and maybe someday my kids, but I still enjoy it. Sailor Moon has a special place in my heart, kind of like how Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny has a special place in many other people's hearts, although I like them a lot too. And I was thrilled years ago, I think this was like 1999 or something, when I discovered that they were making Sailor Moon comics. And what's even better about the comics as opposed to the TV show is that the comics are essentially like a novel. It's drawn and written by one person, Nako Takuchi, so it's like you're getting the author's vision. And as much as I like the TV show, and I'm sure a lot of you like the TV show too, you cannot deny the Sailor Moon anime and even the Crystal adaptation to some extent was very, very different from the comics. In fact, I love the Sailor Moon comics so much, I have bought these things way more times than most sane people would. Like, here's how I used to buy Sailor Moon. When they were releasing Sailor Moon, first they started off in like a magazine called Smile or Mix Sign, something like that. And then they spun it off into its own comic book, like this. This is a standard 32-page comic, and they'd release one chapter. So to keep the story going, you had to buy issue after issue after issue. And, you know, it's kind of fun, but then you have like a bunch of comics that you just don't know what to do with, and it wasn't the most efficient way to read the series, to be perfectly honest. And then one day, Mix, who would eventually be known as Tokyo Pop, decided to release them as graphic novels, which I also bought. Now, the graphic novels were a heck of a lot cheaper than buying the issues individually. I think these were, what, $3 an issue, and you would get 3 chapters, whereas you can buy a graphic novel, you can get 10 chapters for $10. It was much more economical. The problem was the graphic novels were kind of small. The artwork was not allowed to shine as much as they did on these big, beautiful pages, which is one of the reasons I kept them. Not only that, but the Mix Sign graphic novel and comic books had flipped artwork, and while most of the names were fine, any characters that had been established in the English dub pretty much kept their English names, with the exception of Usagi, who in the English dub with Serena, in the Tokyo Pop translation, she was Bunny, since Usagi Tsushino literally translates to Bunny of the Moon. It made sense, but then it didn't make sense because they were trying to keep up with some of the English changes, but not all of them. It was very weird. It should also be noted that these Tokyo Pop books were very cheaply made. The pages were prone to falling out, and they were smaller than even most graphic novel standards. Here's a picture, by the way, of an old review I wrote that showed just how different they look compared to other graphic novels that would be the standard, and it was pretty annoying that that was all we had for years. And then one year, the comics went out of print, so you kept them because they were all you had. But then Kodansha comes along and saves the day. Naoko Takeuchi took control over the Sailor Moon property several years ago, which resulted in the comics not being relicensed and the TV show being let to expire, which meant for years we didn't have any Sailor Moon stuff to buy in America except for pirated stuff and old DVDs that were still lying on the shelves because it took a long time to sell them all, believe it or not. And Kodansha did us a solid. They released their version of Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon. Now, these were the original comics. They were unflipped, so you could see the artwork the way it was originally done, and they used the original Japanese names, and the Japanese release had 2 graphic novel releases. They had a 17 release, which was the initial release, and then they had a 12 book re-release, which was like an anniversary edition that had retouched artwork, and there were fewer books to buy. That was the edition that Kodansha brought us. I would also like to mention that they brought Sailor V over to America for the first time so that we could finally read it. I didn't like this as much as Sailor Moon, and that's going to be ironic to find out in a few minutes why, but you know, it was still nice to have this 2-book series that technically was the lead-in to this. And I think I can safely say that for most Sailor Moon fans, this was definitely a welcome addition. It was only $1 more than the Tokyo Pop books. You got more, and the translation was better. You got the original names. Now, some people did complain about the touched up artwork because Takeuchi went back to the series and redrew certain things. Nothing significant, but like in the chapter where we meet Amy and, or Ami, I should say, and she's at the computers. Instead of the computers having floppy disks, which is what they had way back when, she had a CD-ROM, which was way more common, and still fairly common even today in the digital streaming future. Some people said that's censorship, but you know what? I lived through CMX's Tango Tenge censorship fiasco, as well as when Viz Media used to censor some of their Shonen Jump titles for the graphic novel edition, so I could put up with, you know, a disc turning into a CD. That is not a big deal to me. And these releases were so well made that it pretty much made me get rid of all the old Tokyo Pop graphic novels. I got rid of them, I sold them. I actually sold them for a fair amount of money. They were still fairly valuable, but I held on to this and these for one simple reason. The bigger pages meant I could appreciate the artwork more. It's not my preferred way to read them, but you really have no idea how much of the art gets compromised when you bring this and you shrink it down to this. It doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference, but it does. By the way, for those of you who don't believe me, this is what a standard American comic book looked like, so, you know. And to be perfectly honest, I was, for the most part, happy with this collection. It's like, you know what, okay, I bought it a couple times. They're not gonna re-release, and if they do, what could they possibly do to make it any better and make it worth rebuying? Oh, how little faith I had. Because today, I received from Kodansha their newest release of Sailor Moon, the Eternal Edition. Wow. This edition of the book is almost everything I wanted from a perfect Sailor Moon collection. Almost. I mean, there's a couple things that I would have preferred, which we will talk about, but holy cow, this is a nice book. First of all, as you can see, it's pretty big. It is definitely bigger than the graphic novels. And how does it stack up to the old comics? Well, pretty darn close. It comes pretty darn close. So with this thing, I officially do not need to keep these unless I just want to appreciate the cover art, which admittingly, there's a lot of great cover art here. I don't know why I really, really like that one. And I love that one. And I love that one. I should really move on with the review, shouldn't I? And stop admiring all this gorgeous artwork that Takeuchi is able to draw. Alright, so this new Eternal Sailor Moon book is definitely big. It definitely fixed the artwork problem in terms of the size. But does it do anything else that warrants it being repurchased all over again? Because keep in mind, this is a comic book I have officially bought in full 4 times. Technically 5, because I went to Japan and I bought an entire set of the Japanese books. 2 sets of the regular and the special edition. Granted, the regular books were like 100 yen each, so like $1 each, so that didn't really matter too much. But is it worth buying this again entirely? And the answer to that is yes, and let me tell you why. First of all, I cannot understate, having the bigger artwork is definitely a bonus. But here's the other thing. The cover is all glossy and holographic. I don't know if it really shows in the video, but it's super sparkly and really nice. And this just feels great. Also, it has very glossy paperwork. This isn't the rough paperwork that gets all yellow and brown. This is really nice paper. What's more, the small graphic novels that I have currently get up to about 200 to 250 pages each book. This book comes up to about 250 pages, which means there will probably be fewer books to buy in the long run rebuying this. For that matter, from what I've gathered in this book, all of the pages that should be in color are in color. These books did have a few color pages, but they were only at the beginning of each book, and color pages that would have taken place in the middle of the book were left black and white. This, it's not that case. The middle pages are in color too, so they're all there. Now, it should be noted for the purists that yes, this does contain the updated artwork. So you're still going to get the CD-ROMs, and you're going to get references to cell phones still. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I mean, I would kind of like the original artwork to be there at some point, but again, we're talking about a few very, very minor changes and nothing that's related to the story. But that said, there are a few things about the book that prevent it from being perfect, and I wish they would have gone the extra mile just to make this as ultimate as they could. The first thing I would have really liked, this is a paperback book, as you can probably see, and it costs $27.99, $36.99 if you're in Canada. For $7 additional, I would have gladly paid had this been in hardcover. If I'm gonna have the ultimate edition of Sailor Moon, I would love it to be in hardcover because you know what? I've read this book many, many times. I'm gonna be passing it down. Hardcover holds up better than paperback. And I would kind of like to get to a point where it's like, I don't need to buy another copy of this, and hardcover really would have helped to make that a reality. Also, as mentioned, it does have the touched up artwork. Not a big deal for me, but it might be for you. I also admit I really would have liked had they really started with Sailor V and started here. I know technically it's separate from Sailor Moon, but it still, for the most part, fits into the Sailor Moon canon. And to make it as ultimate as possible, I would have liked if this and the short stories could have been integrated into this copy of the book. Maybe they'll still do that at some point, I don't know. But Sailor V takes place before the events in this book, so that's already a missed opportunity in my opinion. All that being said though, I can't find too much to complain about this. This is definitely as definitive as you can get with the Sailor Moon series. In fact, even though this is cheaper, I'm gonna probably get rid of them, to be honest. There's no reason to have that series anymore. Maybe I'll rebuy the comics digitally if I want to bring them on to go. But if I'm going to be at home in one of my chairs with like a cold drink in hand and my significant other just looking at me and wondering why the heck I still read these books, I would rather do this one. I've already read like a couple chapters and boy, I've never read it like this before. This is definitely the preferred way to read it. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do any of you own this book? Do you plan to get it? Do you have any of the other editions of Sailor Moon? Do you even still like the Sailor Moon manga in general? I would love to know. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one. I am loving my Sailor Moon collection. And now Katie is really going to make me get rid of these things, isn't she?